Let's all go to the
mall.
Let's all go to the
Mall.
Let's all go to the
Mall.
to get ourselves a
Horror.
Makoma approached the temple from the west, as generations of king widows had done before her. Her canoe was one of the worst her outpost had to offer, hammered together from rusting salvage. She lost a quarter of the day, stopping to bail out its foundering hull. In a sack woven from strips of old-world plastic gone as soft as skin with age, her husband's bones awaited her final act of devotion.
Let's start a cult. You and me. Rather, you and us. We'll be your two-pronged deity. The Greeks had Janus, the Aztecs, Ometeotl. We can come up with a good name for us, something eldritch, but catchy. Perhaps Yog Escalators or Ubo Escalath. That one gets our vote.
So my story is set in a kind of post-apocalyptic setting where this old ruin of a mall has become a place of kind of fear and worship among the surviving peoples in this world. I wrote it specifically for this anthology, and so part of my initial process was kind of turning over the idea of the anthology in my head and thinking like, okay, what's everybody else going to write for this and how can I do something different? So I knew I wanted to do something post-apocalyptic because I really love world building, and that felt like it would give the most flexibility in that way.
You know, similarly, when I think of shopping malls, I think of like the passage of time and like the decay of like shopping malls, and yours is interesting because it's very futuristic, and I don't want to spoil too much about your story, but I thought that was something that was an interesting part of it. Is like I said before, there's a lot of meaning in the images that are presented.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like I can see some of that inspiration in your story as well, in terms of like the kind of architecture and the ways in which the shapes of things influence like the people around them and also the thing itself. And I really loved the duality of the escalators in your story. So maybe you could now talk a bit about what your story's about.
It's about a killer escalator that it gains self-awareness, and it believes that it has uncovered this sort of divine knowledge and achieved this level of divinity where it says I am a god. And it's kind of it's like pitching, like it is a sort of a salesperson, or like a lifestyle coach almost, trying to tell this person about what it could offer them if they give it something, and that can get it going, that can basically grease the wheels again, and help it come back to life. And the title is hard
the
to
wheels are greased with blood.
Yes, lots of blood. One thing I noticed in your story is mythology and religion seems to be is like a prominent element of it, and the female protagonist, who we see the story through her eyes, is participating in a ritual that I thought it's similar to what the Viking funerals, where slaves and a woman would be put on a ship and burned with the body of the warrior, or the king, or whoever. Are you interested in mythology? Like, do you study it or read it?
I definitely would say I'm interested in it. It's something that I think I don't sort of actively study, but more that kind of informs a lot of what I write, kind of on a basic level, because when you're dealing with the fantastical, myth is just one very small step over there. I was definitely thinking about a lot of the cases of human sacrifice associated with a fancy funeral, for lack of a better word. Over the years, and the way that people become dehumanized and essentially turned into objects and tribute when there's these kinds of situations. And so I kind of wanted to work with that theme and sort of dial into a character who is in that position, and who at least initially is in that position willingly, and kind of get into the mentality of what is that like, and why are you doing this.
at one point in your story and my story, I believe we both refer to a shopping mall as a temple.
Mm.
Um, I thought that was kind of interesting because we mean similar things and we mean different things.
Yeah, I'd say in my story, the kind of temple imagery is much more about the importance that we as humans place onto things, rather than it being like an objective fact of its like sacredness and divinity. I think I was definitely grappling a lot with the idea of how fallible people can be, and when people are, afraid or struggling, the sort of bad choices they make in the way that society can kind of step backwards in situations like that. And so I think for me, the kind of temple imagery was much more about the idea of religion from the human side of things rather than the sort of more deity side of things. But I think you're definitely kind of coming at it from the opposite direction, since you're dealing with a literal escalator god in yours.
Yeah, the escalator, who is kind of has this like two-pronged mind because escalators go up and they go down, and that sort of cognitive dissonance, or that conflict is the seed for its self-awareness. It sort of begins to contemplate that, and it which allows its thinking to grow. And it refers to the mall as a temple because a religion organizes around it. Um, but in both of our stories, I think there's a certain like cynicism towards consumerism and materialism, and in your story, I think patriarchy and how that's part of and packaged with the consumerism of the mall. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And mine is like I said, is a little more literal, and it's reference to a temple. But I think we both approached the subject with like a level of criticism, and we kind of are trying to address what we see as maybe the superficiality or the problems with consumerist culture. And
But yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And honestly, talking about this now almost makes me want to go back and figure out what a story for this anthology would look like that is very like, yeah, consumerism, because like all the ideas that I thought of were, like, ugh, consumerism. But I think it could be interesting. That could be an interesting alternate side of it. So I'll be excited to read the rest of the stories in the anthology and see if there's anything like that in there.